Hey boys, really done an update. I just realized I didn't do an update at all yesterday. Like we were running like crazy. I shared a couple new entries, but I didn't do like an overall update for a couple days, which is weird. Um, anyway, uh, my trades, I just figured they're all doing so well. I'm just going to leave them open. I shared a couple new entries, but overall, not much else has changed. In the past, my strategy, as many of you guys remember, involved moving up my stop losses aggressively to lock in profit, right? And I altered that strategy of late because we've been so hyper bullish. We just run and run and run. I'm able to target these amazing, precise entries that nobody else can pull off because my models are so good. So if I get it at the right spot, make a lot of money, I don't really have to worry about it, and then I can ride it long term. However, it's a big but. You always run the risk of there being a big dump and you lose back all your gains. That happened the other day, right? Like I was ripping and running like crazy with Link, for instance, right? So take a look at like what happened with Link. I was up a ton, and then we had that big dump, and everything rocketed back down a ton, right? So at one point I was up 30%, that big dump, and now I'm up 17%, right? So now the big question that people have been asking me in DMs and stuff is the big, all these breakout trades you've been able to pull off lately. Are you going to take profit from them and close them out? What are you thinking? And I see why people are asking that because after that big dump, the question is, do we get another? Now, we have this run up, and then normally you get like an ABC correction, a traditional corrective sequence would be like a zigzag. You'd have that ABC wave structure. So we had the first dump down, and now this move up, and could we expect another move down? So there's a few ways to look at that. Looking at the higher time frames would be really helpful though. So if you look at the weekly, for instance, the Stoke on the weekly is still fairly early in this multi-week bull run, right? I talked about how we're going to get this multi-week bull run. We have been crushing it. So with this multi-week bull run, we're still only halfway through. And again, if you look at the monthly, this is the most exciting part. We are wide open on the monthly, right? Now, I haven't looked at all of the individual charts, but if you look at Link, we are just starting this reversal up on the Stoke, right? Which, like I said, we have a multi-month bull run, so I haven't even considered taking profit or anything. So the main update for now on my current existing trades is let it ride. That's what I'm going to do. If you needed money, if you needed to take out some of that capital, you could close out some shorter term trades or maybe sell 20, 30, 40% of your trades of those positions and take a nice profit. That's obviously fine. Some of my bigger moves, like my Rune run, obviously really, really strong model. That's close to being back to the all-time high. I mean, at one point on the most recent run, it was up 86%. Okay, so that's back to the all-time high. Now remember, 86% is where we were. We dumped down, and I told everybody that run, that initial breakout that was just for the premium group, is just the start. So when I shared it with the basic members, and then I shared it publicly, and I even shared it on Twitter, I was telling everybody, like, it's still early on in this run. And you can see we've already recovered and gotten back to that prior top and some, right? So we're going way higher on Rune. That's not even a question. I wouldn't even consider selling this. I was telling you guys weeks ago when I first shared it with the premium members only before the 80% breakout that I was expecting at least 200% on this run. It's going to be a really big run. We have a multi-month bull run brewing across the board, and that's what we're seeing. So Rune, I wouldn't even consider thinking of selling. Some of the others, maybe I could see an argument to be made that some of them you can take some profit, but again, we have really, really bullish models. We're back to close to the prior top. My more recent Sol entry is up over 8%, right? Actually, it's up more now. So I shared, it got up 10% at one point, now it dipped slightly. But I shared these more recent entries after the big dump down, and that gave an opportunity for people who missed that first run up to then get in, right? So you had an opportunity to get in. If you did, you could still ride it out long term. But if you got in with me down here as a short term thing, you could close it out. It really depends on what you need to do personally. So for me, I'm leaving my mid to long term holds all open, but my more recent trades right here. When I got in again after the big dump, and I said I'm opening up a new short-term trade here. If you look at my short-term trades channel, I have my Sol entry there, but I also have my Sol entry in my long-term trades channel. The reason it's like that is because I had opened a mid to long-term hold on Sol and several others, right? And then after that big dump, I had entered into a short-term trade on the way up. So it's really like two separate positions. In this case, I'm not touching my mid to long-term Sol trade, but my short-term one where it broke out for 10%, I'm probably going to take profit or close that out because that was out of my funds that I traditionally save for the shorter term stuff, right? So that's eating up that capital I could be applying elsewhere. So right now it's up 10%. If I go and look at the daily, we have a turn up on the Stoke. We're pretty hyper bullish on the 4-hour. It's hard to say because we're turning up again on the 4-hour Stoke, but we never really corrected all that much. So I think it could go higher. At this point, no matter what, all my short-term trades, I'm going to move my stop loss at the very least. For the trades where I started with a stop loss, I'm going to set the stop limit order at my entry price, right? In this case, I probably should set it higher. You can see there was a little green wick that came down here and bounced right on the 55 EMA. We have the 55 EMA, one of my key Ichimoku dynamic supports, along with the top of the cloud, creating a ton of support there. In theory, I could put my stop loss anywhere below those, and it would be good stop loss placement, but I'm going to place it at my entry for now, and then I'll let it ride. With Matic, really great shorter-term trades on that one. I had my original big entry where it ran up for 36%. The more recent trade here did a big run up, then the shorter term correction, and now it's starting to bounce again. I'm considering opening up a new short term position here to add to this one. But since I already have this more recent entry, I'm just going to leave this open and ride this up. But if you did miss out on Matic, you could see we're getting to those lower levels in the 4-hour. We're close to starting a reversal, plus this already looks like a decent bounce because the hourly gave us a bounce. The hourly is getting high on the Stoke, but we don't have a clear repeating pattern here. I'm not going to jump in yet, and I wouldn't suggest jumping in yet. I'm going to wait and see how this plays out because we could dip down lower, and we might see Matic return all the way to where I entered into this shorter-term trade. So in this particular case, I could just close this out, and then I could get back in if we keep going up, or if we dip down to the top of the cloud, get in again. About that and let you know. I want to run through the rest of my trades, but I don't have that much time right now. The shorter term attempt on some of these didn't really hold. JST is a mid to long term hold, so I never had a stop loss on that. It broke out for 7%, dumped down. Now it's back to the prior entry. So I'm just going to let that ride a little bit longer, and then I'll do a more detailed analysis later. Where do we stand on my original Sun trade, which did a 31% run? Came back down to below my original entry, right? So I lost back all that profit. So that's a good example where if it's up 30%, do you sell or do you just let it ride? I let it ride and I gave back all the profits, and now I'm back to just above my original entry where I'm only up like 4 or 5% probably, right? But that happens. I'm accepting that as part of my strategy. My Atom trade, how did that do after the first dump? So I had planned to get in here, where you can see this is a short-term trade where I had a stop loss. So that stopped me out. So I actually don't have this Atom trade anymore. I did a couple shorter-term ones since then, but that first Atom buy, if I recall correctly, I had a stop loss on like most of the position. I think I only had a small, like 30% of that position where I set it on the side with no stop loss. So I should still have an Atom position here sitting on a nice profit. But most of that position definitely got stopped out. Rest of the alts in a few, and I'll do an update for you guys. For right now, to get an overall idea of where I see the trajectory heading, let's look at the majors really quick. Look at the different time frames, specifically the 4-hour. So the 4-hour is pretty hyper bullish, but we're right at the top of the cloud on Bitcoin. The top of the cloud after this big wick here that dumped down close to the bottom. Now we're at the top of the cloud. That's a main resistance. We likely might get rejected here and come back down, especially with the 4-hour being really high on the Stoke. It's possible. If we push up above the top of the cloud here, we're just going to run. Remember, on Bitcoin, right, we have the daily turning up here, so we're starting a bullish, multi-day bullish run. Then the weekly is getting up to those higher levels, but the overall run on the monthly is still not even halfway through. So we're still in the middle of a multi-month bull run. I predicted all-time highs. It hit perfectly, but I'm expecting us to go higher and continue going upward. It's going to be a multi-month bull run, but during that process, you're going to experience some reversals on the dailies and the weeklies. So we could see a multi-week correction. I was talking about it days ago. I said we're going to see a multi-week correction. I had a YouTube video called Multi-Week Market Correction Incoming, but not just yet. And sure enough, since then, we went on a really strong, aggressive move back up. We could be seeing that fairly soon. The Stoke's getting really high on the weekly, but we don't have any sort of bearish confirmed reversal. So I would rely more on the daily model for right now, which is turning up on the Stoke. I think this tells us we're going to see multi-day bull run and probably go prior to the prior top, retest 66.8. Then we might get rejected from a double top and get a big correction. That's going to take us over the next week and a half, give us some of that multi-week correction so we can come back down on the Stoke and bleed off some of that momentum and get a fresh start. So we'll see how that plays out. And then on Ethereum, similar situation, but the charts haven't been as well aligned, and we don't have the same sort of models. Like on the Stoke, for instance, we don't have a clear pattern on the daily. But my model has been flawless. I talked about this more recent entry. I predicted that wave 3 ending here, the wave 4 correction, all of that hit flawlessly. My Elliott wave count really was perfect. Now this wave 5, the target for the wave 5, I exaggerated it here. So if I was going to redraw that correctly, because I never really drew that wave 5 correctly, I really something like this. 4,600 would be a good target for that. So this more recent entry on Ethereum was great. I would expect total this run to go up 15% or so. That would be a perfect wave 5 target. Then we're going to get more of a correction. That's what I would expect based purely on the count, but we could go higher to the 1618 extension and go all the way up to close to 5,100. But initially that one-to-one extension at 4,600 is the primary target. So we're not that far away, and we're already, 2/3 of the way there. The daily's turning up. The weekly's getting pretty high on the Stoke. I think we could be coming up in that big correction from the weekly, where we start with a big dump down that takes us for 2-3 weeks, moving sideways and a little bit down. We might be right on the cusp of that. 4,600 is going to be a big, major resistance for Ethereum because, again, that's the one-to-one extension for wave 5. If you're in Flux Trading Group and you've seen my educational content talking about how to employ Elliott waves and use extensions, then you'll remember wave 5 is usually a one-to-one extension of wave 1. I was able to predict this wave 3 target so incredibly accurately because it was the 1618 extension of wave 1, exactly what the model proposes it would be. So by that logic, I'm going to expect wave 5 to hold to the same model and take wave 5 to 4,600. So this really is the perfect target. I'm going to set a notification just under at 45.75. If that happens to trip, I'm going to know that we're coming up on the most likely reversal point. So I'm going to close out my Ethereum position there. If we happen to fail here and start to come down, I might close it out. But right now, it's a really great trade. I'm going to leave it open a little bit longer, but ultimately with my Ethereum trade as precise and great as this was, I think it's time to close it out and take those profits. And then my longer-term positions can still stay open until I decide what's going to happen with the multi-week reset. Once that multi-week reset starts, I'm going to close all of my positions for the most part, almost everything. Unless I see one of the charts that looks like it's not going to follow that path, I'll leave that open. But everything else that looks like it's lined up with Bitcoin and it's taken a multi-week dip or at least a sideways multi-week correction where it just kind of cools off for a bit, I'll probably close out almost every one of those trades. But I'll revisit it later. I'm not going to make that decision now. All right, that's the update for right now. I'm going to get into more detail on the altcoins. That video will only be for the private Flux Trading Group members. I'm not going to do that publicly because I might share some new trades. But if you're not in the group and you like my content, you want to learn how to trade like me and learn my techniques and styles, you could support me by joining the group. That would be really amazing. The info is in the description of the video. And if you don't and you just want to watch my free content and learn, that's totally fine by me. No pressure. I love teaching people. If you're not in a position to join like a paid group, I totally get it. I'm happy to share as much content as I can for free. Hopefully it's able to help you. And if not, keep working at it. You'll get there eventually. All right, that's it for now. Trade safe, trade smart.